our first speech today is about family, the dynamics within a family. And those dynamics come out during the holidays, as we all know, at the dinner table, and at various times throughout the year. Well, our first speaker, Jacob Scammon, is going to talk about a unique situation because he works with his family members in the summer. So Jacob is going to talk about a very unique profession that he takes part in every summer and how it affects the way he interacts with his father and his brother. Jacob?
Thank you, Mr. Markanich. I sit on the boat listening to waves crash on a nearby shore and seagulls chirping overhead. I see seals poking their heads out of the water and climbing onto rocks that look like large lily pads out in the middle of the ocean. All of a sudden, I hear, "Jake, what are you doing? Get back to work, clean the deck, bait the irons, ban the lobsters. What's the holdup?" This is my brother, Russ, squawking out orders like he is the king. I reply, "Whoa, bro beans, you need to settle." And think to myself, why would I do any of that stuff? If I don't do it, then Russ is going to have to do it. So I just sit down a little while longer and wait until my dad pulls up the next string. Since I was a young lad, I have spent every summer harvesting one of Maine's most popular goods, the lobster. I have been blessed to be born into a middle-class family that catches this unique creature. There are very few people in the world who get to directly interact with the lobster, and I'm fortunate to be one of them. I fish lobster out on the boat with my dad, Rob, and my brother, Russ. It's a solid crew, despite our weak link, Russ. At the beginning of the summer, my father puts over 800 traps in the water. These traps are made like mouse traps, in the sense that they lure lobsters in with bait, in this case, with dead fish. And once the lobsters are in the trap, they cannot get out. The bait is placed on irons, which are literally little iron rods about a foot long with the handle at the end. There is a small hole at the tip of each iron. Fish are stabbed onto this iron rod, once through the eyeball and once through the body of the fish. To get the bait in the trap, you have to put a string, which is attached to the trap, through that small hole and dump the fish onto the string, so the string is going through the fish, and then tie the string to the trap. Needless to say, this is a process. And one day, about 500 of these traps can be hauled. The process of hauling traps essentially involves pulling traps out of the water using a piece of equipment called a hauler. All of these traps are organized in strings, which is a series of 8 traps, connected by rope with a buoy tied at each end. Each trap is hauled onto the boat one at a time. My father pulls up the traps, opens them, and takes all the large lobsters, or keepers, out. My brother's job is to rebait the traps and stay out of my dad's way. He has a tough time with the second part. Once my brother is finished, he closes the door to the trap and sends it down to me. I have the easiest job on the boat. I have to lift a 60-pound trap off of the railing and put it on the table directly behind me, and then pull the rope to keep it organized. This is a very strenuous job, so in between strings I need to take breaks and sit on the table. The toughest part of my job is fighting Mother Nature. There is a canopy over the front of the boat, which protects my father and brother from the rain and sun. However, I stand at the back of the boat, so I am at the mercy to the weather. I almost prefer when it rains, because I would rather be wet and cold than getting picked alive. The only upside to a long hot day on the boat is the afternoon dip, when my brother and I get to jump off the canopy into the cool, refreshing water. Although I enjoy spending time on the boat with my family, there are a few things I dislike about being out there. First off, there's the smell. The entire boat just reeks of dead fish, probably because there are barrels of them just sitting on the boat and there's no escaping it. Try to eat a ham sandwich while staring directly into a pile of dead fish that your hands also smell like. The odor just leaks right through my gloves. In fact, food is a major issue for me on the boat. I like to eat a lot, and there's just not enough out there. And it all tastes terrible. As I constantly express on the boat, everything just tastes like rotten fish. It's a god-awful taste you can't get out of your mouth. Even the water we bring out there tastes bad. Literally everything tastes bad. Except for Scooby-Doo gummies. Which for some reason still taste delectable. I don't have time to pack a good lunch in the morning because we leave so darn early. Getting up at 6 a.m. is just impossible for me, and the days are just way too long, running from 7 a.m. to around 2 p.m. However, there are a lot of things I like to do on the boat to help the time pass a little more quickly. My favorite activity is to make my brother angry, which can be done in many different ways. One aspect of my job is to take the lobsters that are too small out of the traps, but sometimes instead of putting these lobsters back in the ocean, I like to throw them in the next trap while my brother is trying to bait the trap. Another way I like to upset my brother is by throwing mud on his oil gear, which he insists on having clean at all times, even though it just gets dirty after every stream. My favorite way to make my brother mad is to pretend not to hear him. If he tells me to do something, I will reply with a simple, "What?" He will then repeat what he said, and I will again reply, "What?" I try and keep this going as long as I can until he figures out what I'm doing. And then I get to say, "Hey bro, I just need you to say that 5 times. Although I get the most enjoyment out of making my brother mad, there are some times we have fun together on the boat. Like when we go for the afternoon dip, or when we play lacrosse on the boat. I will toss a fish up in the air, and Russ will stab it in midair with the pitchfork, and then throw the fish into the barrel. We also find entertaining ways to get rid of crabs on the boat. My brother will throw them up in the air, and I will hit them with a wooden bat, crushing them into the water.
That's awesome!
On the boat, I also get a lot of time to think. My mind is allowed to explore. I find the more time I spend daydreaming, the faster the day goes by. I think about my future and what I'd like to do. I think about what kind of college I'd like to go to, and what I'd like to do there. What I want to study, and what kind of extracurricular activities I would like to do there. One of my most common thoughts is how we should have our own TV show. Nowadays, there are so many shows out there about fishing, like Deadliest Catch and Swords. I feel like we could probably produce a more entertaining show. I'd call it Lobster Brothers. For better or for worse, I don't always get to go on the boat with my dad and brother. I think I only went out for about a month last summer, and even though I'm the first one asking to go back to shore, I actually really enjoy the time I spent out there. In fact, last summer might have been the last time I get a chance to go fishing. As at the end of the season, my dad sold the boat. This isn't a big deal for my father. He will frequently sell boats and buy older ones and fix them up. But I don't know if he will do that again. The price of lobster went down a lot last summer, so he did not make as much money. And after expenses, there was even less. It concerns me when he says he's all done fishing because there's no money to be made. As he says, I make more money standing around talking than actually fishing. I honestly don't know if he is serious. As long as I can remember, every summer my father has gone out to catch lobsters. And I worry what he's going to do in the future. Lobstering is a family tradition. My mother's father and all 13 of his siblings were also lobstermen. It's in my blood, whether I like it or not. And it would just be weird not to go out on the boat next summer. I never imagined myself becoming a lobsterman in the future. I don't think my parents do either. But it's certainly something that I enjoy and hope to do again with my father sometime. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Pete. We've all had times when someone has told us no. That answer is particularly hard to take when it's because of our appearance or our gender. Our next speaker, Emily Priest, is going to talk about what it's like when no just wasn't an option, and the strength she's learned because of her determination. Emma.
Thank you, Mr. Hoyt. I began teaching snowboarding at 14, and I first year as a snowboard instructor, teaching a little boy named Max. Max hated me. The reason that Max disliked me so much, gave me the silent treatment, tried to run away, and did all of the other various things he did to make my day worse, came down to one simple sentence: girls can't snowboard. Coming from a 5-year-old, this wasn't necessarily a spirit-crushing accusation. However, after this incident with Max, I became much more aware that people may be judging me and my abilities because I'm a girl. When I began teaching, I was the only female snowboard instructor. When I was 15, I was told that obviously I could not be a good snowboarder because I was a girl. I admit that part of this underestimation of women does come from reality. Snowboarding is a sport with very few female participants in the first place. And many people here have probably encountered girl snowboarders side-slipping down the hill without turning, and as many skiers would say, ruining the trails. The stereotypes stem from these skiers' attitudes combined with the attitudes of many male snowboarders. They're both contributors. Generally, skiers don't like snowboarders all that much, because many snowboarders are more careless than many skiers. In addition to snowboarding receiving a bad reputation from skiers, there is also tension between different groups of snowboarders, specifically male and female. In most sports, there's a girls' team and a boys' team, girls' soccer and boys' soccer, girls' hockey and boys' hockey. Snowboarding is one of relatively few sports where both genders are frequently interacting. This inevitably causes tension. Most boys generally think that they're better than most girls at sports. Many times, this is true, and it is a stereotype which finds its way into almost all sports. However, it's much more difficult to compare while playing on different teams. When both boys and girls are doing the same sport, at the same time, in the same place, the competition becomes much more intense. This close competition makes the stereotypes all the more noticeable. At 10 years old, my sister Anna tried to buy an adult snowboard. Shop after shop refused to sell it to her because all of them thought that, since most women wouldn't be good enough to ride that snowboard, there was no way a 10-year-old would be. It turned out to be the perfect board for Anna, once she found someone to sell it to her. This incident seemed extremely strange to me. Although I hate to admit it, since Anna is my younger sister, she has always been much better at every sport than I am, including snowboarding. The irony of Anna being one of the best snowboarders I knew, and still being denied the gear she wanted, was astounding to me. Anna is still one of the best snowboarders I know. Even in snowboard advertising, gender bias is frequent. At first, it's not too noticeable, until a few companies try to capitalize on the industry's shortcomings, saying things like, finally, a jacket that comes in cute colors and won't fall apart after one day on the hill. Ads like this address the fact that there are differences in the way men and women are treated in the ski and snowboard industry. Jackets, boots, and snowboards made for women are frequently much less durable than those made for men. The real conflict, to me, comes with the fact that, although this inequity is acknowledged by advertisers, there are very few people who are willing to work to change it. These stereotypes originally hit me very hard for 2 reasons. First, I didn't have any female snowboard coworkers to sympathize with. It was only boys, all the time. Also, this type of adversity wasn't something I was familiar with. When I was a child, my father was a stay-at-home dad. This meant that I had spent much of my childhood doing things many people think of as things boys do. When I was younger, I never encountered the stereotypes that I did when I began to teach snowboarding. I was too young to notice that I was the only girl in my class who liked to jump in the mud and catch frogs instead of playing with Barbies. And I was too young to notice that my father was the only one at story hour at the library. I was used to doing things that were thought of as things boys do, but I was not used to having